get started then and not lose too much time. Is everyone happy with that? And if the new people, other people come, we can always jump over. Great. Well, welcome everybody to the first Parkour Earth Global Engagement session. This has been something that the Parkour Earth board has been setting up for quite some time now, and we're kicking it off today with this discussion with all of you folk from various federations and organizations of parkour communities around the world. My name is Elliot Duffy. I'm a facilitator. I work for a company called ThinkPlace, but was previously involved in Parkour Earth and have now moved on to other things. So Damien was kind enough to invite me back in to help out with these sessions. So today, as I mentioned, it's the first session that we're doing in the global engagement. It's an opportunity to really be building this organization that sort of sprung out of a situation internationally, and now has had to or now is trying to build itself and figure out what the best way forward is. It's an organization that really wants to do things a little bit different to how traditionally sports associations have done things, and this session is part of that, part of building the strategy and the purpose of the organization as a community rather than having it dictated down. In the interest of time, what I'd love to do is just invite everyone to introduce yourself, but use the chat function down in the bottom, the written function. So we've got participants today from all over the world, from Indonesia, from Switzerland, Australia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Israel, and a whole bunch of other countries. So if you can all introduce yourselves into the chat function at the bottom there, just type in where you're from, your organization, your name. That'll be awesome, and I'll keep introducing the session as you guys do that. For those of you who haven't used Zoom before, just a few things to note. The conversation is going to be pretty free-flowing across all of us. I won't be talking and presenting for much, hopefully. So if you can't get your voice heard or people are talking over you, either use the chat function or use one of the reactions like a thumbs up like this, and I'll call out to you. We're also recording today's session. In the interest of being as transparent as possible, we wanted to record everything and make sure it's available publicly. So if you did not want it recorded, or you didn't want your face recorded or anything like that, please let me know, and we'll just make a transcript available rather than the whole recording. And yeah, I think that's about it. Imad, you've got your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to add? Nope. Great. All right, so thanks Justin, Lon, and Theo for putting intros into the chat. If everyone else can keep doing that, that'd be great. So a couple of things about what today is going to be and what it's not going to be. The first thing about what it is it is a session where you guys are going to be participating, and it's about you guys putting your thoughts forward about Parkour Earth and what it should be doing. It's very much so a session where we're trying to create a strategy for the organization, and what you guys say is very much so what I'm going to be recording and trying to put into that strategy. So I'll be sharing my screen shortly and collecting those notes as much as I can. If you see anything that I'm collecting that doesn't accurately reflect what you're saying, let me know. It's not a session where it's purely about question and answer for Parkour Earth and for the board. If you guys have questions, we've put some time aside at the end to do that. But the intent is really that hopefully we're getting your answers rather than you guys asking Parkour Earth questions. So please feel free to ask questions, but it's not a panel type situation. It's also not an opportunity to be, we all know that parkour communities love to have pretty fierce debates and arguments about anything from, the right way, the competition versus no competition debate, or the right way to set up an organization, or the right way to interpret a certain philosophy under parkour. Some of those debates are really critical for the strategy of Parkour Earth, but I'm going to be pretty strict on making sure if we're having those debates, they're constructive and they're going towards something we can put in the Parkour Earth direction and strategy. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it there as far as the intro. Before we jump into it, did anyone have any questions or any last things they wanted to raise at all? Sweet.
Elliot, I've just made you host, so you will have to admit Cyrus, who's in the lobby.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay, cool. I'm going to hand over now to Damien, who's just going to give a little bit of an intro as to how this sort of came to be and a bit of background into what underpins Parkour Earth and the work that they're doing. Damien, I'll throw to you and I'll start capturing notes that everyone should be able to see.
Cool. Yeah, so hello everybody. I am Damien Puddle and I am the new CEO of Parkour Earth. And just a little bit of preamble or background. For those of you that are familiar with Parkour Earth, will know that we were set up in 2017, and a big part of our development was to sort of an urgent need to provide a formal and international representation for parkour in opposition to what FIG, or FIG, the International Gymnastics Federation, was doing around encroaching on parkour. And although the International Parkour Federation existed at the time, the 6 founding members felt that it was important to create something from the ground up that had international buy-in and was able to essentially the community create exactly what they wanted in an international federation. And so that was the catalyst for Parkour Earth's formation. But the development of the organization has really been focused and spearheaded on what does a democratic, community-led organization look like, and how can we ensure that the community actually has the buy-in and can actually steer the organization moving forward. So there has been lots of questions and people asking, what are the benefits of joining Parkour Earth, or how do we join, or what is Parkour doing? Will we set up competitions? Will we do this or that? And we really felt in the same way that we didn't like the way that past organizations or FIG were imposing decisions on the global community, we wanted to make sure that any decisions we made actually came out of the community itself. And so even though we had 6 members and now we have 9, we still want more community buy-in, and we also don't want it to be in the same traditional way that other international sports federations are set up, because we think parkour is different and we think the parkour community is different. And something new in our day and age now is worth finding a different way to do it. See if we can find a better way, both for our community and perhaps the international community, to look at how we are developing our organization. So although what FIG is doing and what's happening with gymnastics is still of interest to Parkour Earth and still important, we really want to make sure that we are democratic, community facing, and connected well with the community, all the way from yourselves as federations down to the grassroots practitioners and athletes in countries all around the world. So we really need your voice to shape what Parkour Earth can look like in the future. And so we're really thankful that you've taken the time out to share that with us. And I'm really excited about the project, because I think this is what is necessary to to bring some unity and some excitement internationally for things that we can do together and do well. And so on behalf of the board, some of who are here tonight, just again want to thank you for any input and questions and reflections and anything that you share today and in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, Damien. So that gives a bit of a foundation as to what we're discussing or where this discussion is coming from. But I wanted to throw over to all of you guys and kick off the conversation about, so far, how has Parkour Earth been perceived by the community and by your federations? What's the impression been from your sides so far? And anyone can jump in.
Maybe I'll start. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jan.
So in Switzerland, we joined because we thought we had a fight we had to battle against FIG. So that was the main reason why we joined, to gather forces and to strengthen Parkour Earth against FIG. But what we realized is that we must do more if we want more people to join. So the Swiss association was created for the same reason, to fight gymnastics in Switzerland. But it was hard to bring people into the association until we had a positive project to make people interested in joining us. So as soon as we started with the idea of creating a coaching curriculum, it really brought more people into the association. And this, I think, is where, what we think about Parkour Earth now is that we've created something against gymnastics, but we need something more positive, so more people join, and so people have an interest in joining it, and not just joining to broaden the numbers of Parkour Earth. So this is our position at the moment.
Hi, good morning, guys. I'm Cyrus. I'm from India. And I've been fortunate enough to have conversations with Damien and some of the rest when the original FIG saga came up. At that time, the Indian parkour community was relatively nascent. And over the last few years, it's actually grown exponentially. And we've had a lot of expansion in parkour-related businesses, gyms, parkour parks, and a lot of coaching. And as a result, we've also created more events and had a lot more interaction between the different parts. India is a very big country, but we've had, through having national events and more communication, we've been able to really have some group cohesion among all the different parts of the country. And so over the last years running national events, we have also been sort of painfully aware of different groups of people trying to encroach on the administrative side of parkour. For us, gymnastics has not even been the primary one. We've actually had a couple, not even just one, but a couple of imposter national organizations created by the IPF in an attempt to sort of take control of the country. Thankfully, they've so far picked extremely incompetent people to lead those, and as a result, all of them have failed. But they keep coming up. The latest one was literally a month ago. And again, thankfully, they seem to have no idea or motivation about how to do it, but they keep trying to install people as relative figureheads. So it's been a point of urgency now for a while to try to create an actual community-based, homegrown, practitioner representative organization. And Parkour Earth actually has been a very good source of guidance, advice, and I think like leadership and spirit of how to approach developing a community organization with democratic principles and good governance. So that's why we're here to learn more. And we are midway through our application to be more, I think, associate members. So hope to complete that soon. Thanks.
That's awesome. That's super cool to hear. Anyone else? How's Parkour Earth been perceived so far by your communities? What's it meant in your community?
Hey everybody, if it's cool, I'm going to give you a minute or two.
Yeah, please.
Thanks, Cyrus. I think a lot of the sentiments you shared with us are shared globally, and especially, I mean, South Africa, I'm from South Africa, Cape Town in particular, but it's represented more in the other cities of the country. For us, it's still a relatively unknown sport or art discipline to take part in. Parkour is, we do not have a high number of people partaking. There's still a lot of lack of education and awareness of what it is in the first place, especially with our pretty well-known crime stats and things like that. So it's still kind of an outskirts art. So in terms of what Cyrus is saying, I think a lot of that happens with us as well, in terms of we still growing it, and it comes from the people, and the organizations have very little to work with that allows it to grow in a way that suits what parkour truly is. So what I thought to answer more specifically is the perception of Parkour Earth from us. And it seems like, I'm sorry to use this as an example, but the global pandemic that's happened now, the way that the world goes more and more online and things happened, it's not as if these things weren't going to happen. It's more like because of the pandemic, things have been accelerated. So because of the actions of other companies and businesses, and the most clear example, FIG, sort of encroaching on what parkour is, it's kind of forced people to accelerate how they can strengthen themselves and how to truly represent parkour from the people. So we found as South Africa that we've really, I mean, Paul, just add in if you need to, we've had to really move our feet a lot, and it's been quite tough for us to get some kind of authority over what gymnastics federations in South Africa are doing anyway. And because so many people are unaware so much of what parkour is in the first place, or what the authority is, it's very confusing for the general public and even the practitioners themselves to know where they should put their energy. So in terms of Parkour Earth, I mean, it's definitely one of the most refreshing movements that has ever happened for us, because it seems like you guys are following that exact principle of democracy and true virtues, and representing the people that do the art, as opposed to people who see the business side of it or have some kind of superficial interest in what parkour is. So in terms of the influence you guys have, it's great so far. What I can say is it's because it's still very unknown and still very new. I think people are still waiting to see what happens. So these meetings and these organizations that you're organizing with these chats are amazing. So I thought I'd definitely add to it. So people, I think, are keen, and I think the message you guys are spreading around so far is very good. And I think it's true to what the global parkour community sees as. But I think people still need to see a lot more growth and a bit of strength in the development of Parkour Earth before they can really have something that is a contender to any organization out there who feels that they can encroach on what parkour is. So just thank you for that. But I think part of it, yeah, like you guys are doing, it needs to grow. It needs to get more people involved. And from what I've seen so far, it gives me a lot of hope. So thank you for that. That's just my quick side from bottom of the world here in South Africa.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Justin. You started to touch on something there, Justin, that I was keen to dive into a little bit deeper, mentioning democracy, the focus on the art, some of these things that seem to be different about what we're doing with PKE. I'm keen to sort of jump into that discussion of, what are those things that that does or should differentiate Parkour Earth? Or what are those things that this community and this organization should be standing for, that's going to differentiate us from these other orgs?
Yeah, I mean, just as a foundation, I mean, again, because this country in particular is not very well established, we have Parkour South Africa and we have leadership. But I know that compared to something like Parkour UK or Scandinavian regions or other parts of the world, it hasn't been running for as long, or not to say as long, but with as much impact in terms of representing the country or having the authority compared to other federations of other sports. So in terms of what I think is needed is just this open communication from people who are more of an authority, like federations like Parkour UK and around the world, to reach out to the community. So it's always funny that this whole difference between how parkour is represented by the people or how it's seen by the public as a sport or a high risk activity and things like that. But I think the more communication that, let's say anyone, but let's say South Africa, can get from the authorities that are already there. And we know that Parkour UK, I mean, I've met a lot of the guys involved there, Chris Keeley, Dan. I've worked with some of the big group others as well. So I know the intentions behind it and how long it took to get something like that to be recognized officially through the UK. So I'm not sure exactly all the federations involved here, the whole backstory, but it seems like you guys have gone through the trenches to be recognized more as an authority. And we have Parkour South Africa, but in terms of how it's recognized as a sport here, we still got many steps to take for it to give us strength in order to make moves against any gymnastics federations, for example, things like that. I'm sorry if I've distracted from the question, but if you can ask it again, that will help. Otherwise, I can leave it up to someone else to answer.
No, that's cool. That helps a lot. Does someone else want to add in there, or what else is going on there that differentiates this organization or should differentiate this organization from others?
I think from my point of view is that one of the main things is that compared to other like international organization and even other international park organization, there doesn't seem to be anything hidden behind Parkour, like a hidden agenda or some stuff that suddenly appears and you're like, this sounds fishy. So at the moment, Parkour Earth is really transparent and it's clear who is involved and what the aims are. And this is, it shouldn't be, but it is refreshing in the like sport governance world.
Or you never know, they're hiding it. They may be hiding it really well.
Maybe.
I'm presuming, Jan, that that's a suggestion to continue that kind of line of operation rather than now's a good opportunity to do something sneaky.
Yes, exactly.
Sydney.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
Sorry, Justin, you go. You go, Justin.
Just a quick one. I suppose there's a time for you guys to kind of hunker down and really sort of aim your shots. But like the guys have said, the transparency has been so refreshing. And if there is a hidden agenda, it's not really picked up because, you know, we'll come find you if there is eventually. But it seems like you guys are really truthful, and transparency, I think, is a big one. And that's super refreshing. And if you can, I know that there'll be times where you can't just get the message out and wait for everyone's input before you make certain decisions. There is time where you have to kind of sort of hunker down, sniper your shots, whatever you want to call it. But in terms of the communication you've got going, that's already a big step. So I definitely would encourage that as much as you can.
I wonder if this is sort of bleeding into a bit of a discussion that we were going to have after as well, but I think it relates this is potentially a bit of a minefield of different parts of discussion, but when the board first discussed this session with me, one of the things that came up was, how do the principles of practice of parkour itself relate to the organization? What are the principles of parkour are relevant in how we want to govern or how we want to lead this organization? And I guess I want to throw that over to you guys. So beyond those sort of organizational principles we've talked about of transparency, etc., what should it feel like to be a part of parkour? What are those principles of parkour itself that you feel should or shouldn't be involved? And I think the thing that makes this a curly one to consider is, if this is an international organization, we've got a lot of variation in how people practice and what practice means to them. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that. What does it feel like to be part of Parkour Earth, and how does that relate to parkour as a practice and an art?
If I can say something, I just like the thought that I'm from Czechia, I'm Poli, and in our country we have like this kind of like struggle that there is like a lot of like different like groups of parkour practitioners. We have like groups with ADD, but then we have like people like who are like more like old school, and then we have just like the new gen, which is like inspired by like the worldwide community, like I don't know, like Store, Team Fat, and like these like we're like actual community. And like the struggle we find like in our country is like how to be able to like to have the importance for like all of like these categories, because like it's very like diverse group. So I think like this might be like the same situation like in the world, because like for the like young people, it's or like the athletes who are like seen right now the most in the parkour community, it's just like it's kind of like hard like to present ourselves that we actually like do like something like which is like valuable, and to like express I don't know, it's just like to be able like to put our like efforts in something like what is like specific, and what kind of like benefits is it like for them, so they can like understand it, because like they are like the influential one. But yeah, I mean in Czech there was like problem with like there's like often problem for us with like communicating like the message like so it can get like to like the different like spectrum of people, so I think like we should like think like of this.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one to dig into. I mean, in terms of, and we had plenty of these discussions in the first stages of Parkour Earth around who is this group of people that we call the community? Does it include ADD? Does it not include ADD? Does it include people? Does it include professionals? Does it include only community? I mean, what do other people think? What's the sort of principle here that we should be thinking about when we're identifying who we want to represent?
If I may, if anyone else wants to jump in, go for it. I'm just seeing opportunities to add here, but I can definitely add to that. In terms of your question, Elliot, in terms of using the principles of parkour as a way to run the organization, I think that's absolutely where you can draw inspiration and actual methods from. So I think I'm fortunate in that I'm somewhere in the middle of the older generation and the newer generation. And I think any sport, especially one as new as something like parkour, will always go through changes with the times, with the technology, and with the generations. So in terms of the principles that we can use from the get-go, I think it's pretty broadly shared that parkour comes from a place of being better humans. And I know it's a super vague and broad principle to work from, but what I've seen and the people I've had the best connection with, doesn't matter what age, what their style of preference is with how they partake in parkour or free running, whatever it is. I think what's important is that you lead by an example of being a better person, not just to those around you, but for yourself. So in my case, I am a professional, so I do teach people physical training in addition to parkour coaching. So those principles follow through. So in terms of, so thank you, Pavel, that's a good point in that there's so many different people in any given community, let alone different countries, different parts of the world. And I think that's great. And I think it should be embraced. It's very tricky to cater and to embrace everybody in one strong message. But as long as there is a message that can't be argued that it is a good message that people can relate to, that is the foundation of decisions and how something is run, that allows for people to still give their own version and their own expressions within that. So someone who's doing parkour, you probably have people who are a bit younger or a bit more interested in the expression side who will have certain attitudes about what they want parkour to be for them. But I think as long as that is just one part of the equation in the grand scheme of things, I think it's fine to have all that variety. So the principle of, respect, of treating others well, treating yourself well, the environment well, training for the right reasons, and what the training benefits you as a person, that can be seen in different ways. So someone could do action A and get the same benefit as someone who does action B to get the same benefit. And I think that's important. So as a governing body, let's say as an authority on parkour, I think you can draw inspiration from the fact that there are some principles in parkour that apply to just anybody, or it should be endeavored to be applied to. So something as simple as like this, for example, just be strong to be useful. I think it's quite a global thing. And then that's a good foundation. Then when it comes to people interpreting in different ways or doing different things in order to do this, that's where you need a bit of creativity, a bit of fluidity in terms of how you go about it. So I don't know what that means exactly in terms of the administration side of things and those kinds of things. But in terms of drawing inspiration and using principles, I think it definitely applies.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Justin. Any other thoughts on, yeah?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello. I'm Stanislav from Portuguese Street Workout and Parkour Association. And just to represent ourselves, I have one more friend here. It's Henrik. So he has better English than mine. And he will explain you what we are. And well, also we have some questions how we can collaborate together. It's a big pleasure to see you all. And yeah, just pass my words to the Henrik. Henrik?
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm just now relating to the question. I think it's still, the question is about our perception about Parkour Earth. And sincerely, we didn't know anything about Parkour Earth. We just received the invitation to participate. So we have no perception. Just the discussion till here seems quite all right to us, to involve everybody and to make us participate and to feel the community spirit so we can move forward together. That seems our ethics as well. And we are already a member of IPF. So we have a question is, what is the relation of Parkour Earth with IPF? What are the means of collaboration with them? How do we maintain union despite of having different organizations representing parkour? But it seems to us that being against FIG is a common mission, is a common target. So we are also against FIG, and in Portugal, the National Gymnastics Federation already assumes that parkour is their territory. So we had already some meetings with the National Federation of Gymnastics to point our position that we don't agree, and we will fight. We will move things so that parkour members represent parkour and not gymnastics. And our strategy was that in Portugal there wasn't a federation or an association already that represented parkour community, but we had already a long-term activity as street workout association, and many members of this street workout association were also parkour athletes. Yes, and so we found better to transform this street workout association and to make a street workout and parkour association, so we can benefit our background in organizing events. We have 6 years of or 7 years now organizing national championships, and we have international relation with federations worldwide also. So we thought it would be a good thing to have this experience together and pass it to the community of parkour. And from this moment, we started to organize also competitions in parkour. And we have an academy also where we teach parkour and street workout. So this has been our strategy for now, for being actively occupying the space that National Federation of Gymnastics would try to occupy. So say that is organizing competitions. I think they will focus on that. So maybe if we can advance that position, maybe we are in better position to not let them do it. And so this is our questions. How did Parkour Earth started? Already you respond a little bit about that. What is the relation to IPF? And what is your vision of fight or of not letting FIG put their hands in the parkour?
Also, just one more thing, just to make understand. We know who you are, and many our members know what is Parkour Earth, but we have no any clear information about you. Okay, just to make clear, because the community in Portugal, it's a bit more about jumping the walls and not about too much organization. And also this happened more in Europe. I don't know how it's United States or other countries, but in Europe we have no organized people in parkour. Normally we have some academies or some teams represent some communities, but you know, on this moment we need more organization. And basically the question to Parkour Earth, so how we can collaborate and how we can know each other better. Yeah, that's it, if I explain it in good terms.
Yeah, thanks guys. That's really good to hear, and it raises a question for me that's been in my head since we started looking at this, about the spread of Parkour Earth outside of to places like to countries like Portugal, to places that are not an Anglophone country, because I know a lot of our communications in the past have been in English. And there's such a broad spectrum of communities there. So it's a question in my head that I think it also raises for, what role of that method of communication has played in the sorts of places where we have member communities. Damien, did you want to respond to that question that Henrique and Stanislav's raised?
Yeah, happy to. So at the moment, we don't have a formal relationship with IPF. So for those that don't know, Eugene Minogue was the transitional CEO for Parkour Earth when Parkour Earth was founded. And so he was the CEO of Parkour UK, helped to get Parkour officially recognised in the UK. But I took over officially in August last year. And one of the things that what we're doing now is something I really wanted to happen before Parkour Earth went and tried to, I guess, make a mark or state what it was and what it was doing and what it stands for. I think underpinning what we're doing now, the things that Parkour Earth certainly does stand for is democracy, wanting to have a vision of inclusivity. People have rightly pointed out that the Parkour Earth board is Caucasian males at this stage. That's absolutely true. But wanting to have greater diversity and greater input from the global community. So we want to expand that and trying to find the right way to do that. So one of the things that we haven't done, or one of the things that we've tried to be careful with, is we don't want to force anybody into membership or suggest that Parkour Earth is the only avenue and that they need to join us. So in my conversations with different national federations, the ones that I've been able to find out about and access and talk to so far, tried to make it clear that any decision by any community really needs to be at the heart of that community's interest, and not to just join us because we think we have some good ideas. And so there's some groups that we definitely haven't been able to connect with yet, and English is my first and only real language. I speak a little bit of French, but as I understand it, my French is as good as Jan's German. And so it's not good enough to converse with. So unfortunately, we haven't connected further, but part of that has been because there's a lot of things we've had to do behind the scenes to get sort of set up and make sure we're in a position to do what we're doing now, but also because we want to be careful that we do it the right way, because what FIG has done to just say some groups have said we really want competition. Is Parkour Earth going to support competition internationally? We also know there's groups that don't like that, and so we have to really understand both those communities to be able to do something. As Justin and Pavel were talking about, how do you marry those two competing ideologies together? And so I think that's possible, but it requires a platform and a way of discussing that isn't just, hey, come and join us, rather this platform, regardless of who you're affiliated with or not affiliated with anybody, tell us the heart of what's important to you, and let's see if we could turn Parkour Earth into the thing that we want it to be. So so no formal relationship with IPF at this stage. We're going to continue with the Global Engagement Project to hear more about what people would like. If they want that kind of interaction, they want that alignment with the two organizations, or whatever it is they want, so that we have a better picture of how the community wants us to be communicating and responding. So thank you for the question.
Does that answer your questions in your head, Henrique and Stanislav?
Yeah, basically. I need to also digest all the information I'm pointing.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
if I was too fast.
This is not perfect. You speak very quickly, but
Sorry.
yeah, in general terms, yeah, that's it. The question is how we can work, because, for example, here in Portugal, the reality is a bit different. If you know the Team Braga, for example, Parkour Team Braga, so doesn't matter. It's all our members. We exist more than 10 years as the Parkour team, and when the national gymnastic federations came with the with these bad works, we started to think how we can change the reality and how we can be more organized. We also exist many years like a street workout association, and so that we started to use the weapons we have on organization of events, for example, because we think it's very important to organize the national championships just to show, okay, we exist, we are here, because years ago, parkour was like a gem. The people have meeting, jump the walls, everybody is happy, but nothing happened, you know. And now the problem is what we can do in the, how can I explain, what we can do about something to be sorry. I'm blocked.
No worries.
Maybe
No worries.
maybe I can
Traduz,
complete
o
a
que é
little
que
bit.
podemos fazer de concreto para as coisas começarem a funcionar?
Yeah, maybe I can complete what Stanislav was saying, is that we also feel that dichotomy between parkour members that want competition and those who doesn't want, who just want to live parkour, not to compete against anybody. And we have this representation inside the parkour association of members and non-members. And but we just started competitions. There wasn't any competition of parkour in Portugal. We just started as part of a strategy for fighting National Federation of Gymnastics, because we had these meetings with them, and they were very aggressive in taking steps towards representing or turning themselves into the only representatives of parkour. They told us this directly. We will be that. There's no turning back. They told us we will be. FIG has already started. We will do it in Portugal. So you join us, or you don't exist.
Yeah.
Something like this.
We have we record the conversation with them. It's just
yes,
important.
we record anonymously, but we recorded it. And
Nice people.
So
one day we're gonna translate that. Not for now because it's a big conversation. Also, they can call the police about this recording. But yeah, we have other problem, for example, and the FIG use that because the parkour is very commercial. Many teams, also our team, working on events. Just it's not also about parkour. It's using the parkour acrobacy to the to make some money. It's normal, but the problem here is I think FIG understand very well that this shock content or spectacular content can bring more money for them, and the athletes selling themselves to anybody who can pay money. And in Portugal, the reality is not too hard because we have a small community and very united community. So they maybe understand this reality, and they're feeling shamed to selling themselves. The problem is really that the money can pay attentions, and yeah, that's it. What do you think about how we can fight this?
Yeah,
because in one way, I think, okay, everybody money, and we have a lot of athletes. They have no more work to do. That's what they know to do, and this is them. For example, for me, I never will sell in myself to the FIG just for money. For me, parkour is philosophy of the life, and sure, maybe when if one day I gonna feel hungry myself, I'll have the different opinion. I will have the different opinion. I don't know, but I think in this way, just because the parkour is also commercial activity, we should invent something to change. For example, to ask the athlete join more, maybe really parkour projects and not big projects, and because in my opinion we can make the same events like they do, and we can have the same sponsors and so on if we unite all the people worldwide. So how you see this? Yeah, I'm finished.
Thanks for that. That was really good. I think there was a really interesting point raised by both of you that that sits in my mind around this sort of, there's these different tensions or dichotomies, and there's obviously the old one of competition, no competition, but there's also a whole bunch of other ones. We've seen fights around which organization should be representative. We see that at international levels, at national levels. This is something that's always been a part of parkour and the community, these arguments between these two positions. And in my experience working on international associations and national associations, and then a little bit with Parkour Earth, these are often the things that people polarize around and sort of threaten that ability to unite as a whole community. And it's always a question in my head about, when we talk about, how we define who we're representing. I think we started to have a discussion around there, but I'd really like to go a little bit deeper about how do we think about those things? Are there some things where Parkour Earth should have a firm stand on, and it says, for example, Parkour Earth will never take money from an oil company. We can take a stand against that. Or there are other things like competition where I'm sure there are people on this call, some will say Parkour Earth should never be involved in competition, and plenty of others will say Parkour Earth should be involved in competition. I don't want to resolve those arguments, but I think what the organization needs is a principle or a way of thinking that helps us address those problems when they come up. And I think the IPF FIG Parkour Earth sort of triangle is a good example of that. Should we work with IPF or not? We do have a common goal, but a different method. Should we work with FIG or not? Because there may be opportunities there. So I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on those sorts of issues and how we wrestle with those. And also, Imad said you've got a question.
Sorry?
That's right. I'm just also reading out Imad's questions in the chat. So in answer to your question, Imad, there's parts of the parkour community that are working with the gymnastics union and parts that are not. So for Parkour Earth, we've been set up specifically against the gymnastics union to provide a parkour-centric one. Hopefully that answers your question, but I'll type it as well. So anyway, I'll throw it over to you guys. I mean, that issue of how we wrestle with these tensions, what do you think? Are there things we should have stands against, or is it a total inclusive?
I'm just going to chime in there. Yeah, I think it's certainly probably one of the biggest disputes in parkour communities is competition versus not competition and things like that. And for me, I think it's an opportunity for the leaders of people to kind of give themselves the chance to be a bit more creative with what the concept of competition is. So unfortunately, sensationalism and big things and excitement, it will always draw energy, it will always have crowds, it will always have an attachment of funding and finances behind it. Unfortunately, that's just the way the world works, I suppose. And much of the people who do train parkour, whether it's older guys, younger guys, their reasons for training are a lot deeper than that. This is great. And I don't think that'll ever completely disappear. So I think it's fair to say that we can compare what parkour is more to what martial arts is than many other avenues, in that there are different ways in which people use it. So you can literally have martial arts as the monk on the mountain, and there will always be that monk on the mountain, or the person who's doing it for the wrong reasons, or for athletic reasons, or for reasons that are, you know, just for fitness or whatever it is. So I think as it gets more with age, as more people understand what it is or use it for different reasons, you'll always have parkour being done for different reasons. I think fundamentally, I stand more on the side of non-competitiveness because of the certain nature it brings with that. But the more I kind of see what happens and the more I understand, especially as someone who does many, many different forms of training, I see that there is a place for it. And what happens is whatever an art or a discipline is doing, as long as it's from the right place and it's with the right sort of connection to the ethos, I don't think there's absolutely anything wrong with competition. I think if we look back at what competition is and what it's sort of designed for, it is to bring out something in a person, or to bring out something in a group of people or community, or even a country versus the globe. It's a way in which people can further themselves by one degree or another. So I can't, as you said, there's no way we'll resolve the debate about competition or not. But I think because people want to do it, and because it is undoubtedly still one of the best ways in terms of funding and recognition from the world, I think we should look at what, if competition does exist, or if parkour will start to do such thing, we need to make it in a way that is as true to the ethics as possible. And understand that there will always be other people doing other forms of it for different gains. And I mean, I personally would love to see, okay, cool. Not think of let's say we have grassroots parkour, then you have businesses, then you have things, and then at the top of the spectrum you have the big things like the competition, the events, things like that. I would love for that peak to not just be a competition, but something where it's a parkour event, it's a parkour thing. So bringing people back to understanding what it is about parkour, and that is bettering yourself, it is helping the community. I don't know if it's possible for such things to gain as much traction compared to traditional forms of competition, but I think people need to see that when you think of a parkour gathering or a parkour, for lack of a better term, competition, it's not about, you know, who is the best or what is the best time, what is the best score. It is what is the things that people do that is parkour that show that they are getting better or show that they are comparatively, you know, sharing what their skills are compared to other people sharing their skills in a way that is not so polarizing as scores or as obvious as this person's getting paid more or less or whatever. I know it's a very like fantasy land concept, but I think unfortunately we have to face the fact that there is actually a place for competition and there is a need for much of the population who does partake to even benefit from competition. I'm primarily against it, but I think it's possible that you can find either a way to do it in a way that suits the foundations or a way to redefine what it means to compete as a parkour athlete or a parkour person, more in terms of what skills are you doing, what kind of activities are you doing that are specific to a parkour high level of activity compared to a not high level of activity. Super broad. It's actually quite scary, amazing. So I'll leave it open to you guys as well, but it's not something that's going to be resolved soon and there'll be varying opinions. But unfortunately, I think we have to be broad-minded and creative enough to be ready to cater to the different avenues in that regard.
Certainly a challenge for Parkour Earth. I mean, a challenge, as we've talked about internally, when people practice in different ways or perhaps have different values or different introductions to the practice and then different motivations for why they participate, it can create factions or disagreements and things like that, and we've seen that from the earliest days of the practice. So that is always a tension which is further compounded by trying to, how do you create some sort of unity across the globe when we know that this happens within just cities? And so there is Parkour Earth's challenge, I see Parkour Earth's challenge is to find a way to hold these things together and to coexist, but to try and find, you know, what are the things that everyone is really tight-fisted about and say, no, we know that parkour is about, hypothetically, we could say we know what parkour is about, overcoming obstacles, and that everyone should have an opportunity to participate in the way that they want to, and that could be something that everyone is in agreement with, and that's what we hold on to. And there's perhaps other things that are more open-handed in terms of we recognize that there are different expressions and interpretations and passions, and we want to, we may have differing views together on those things, but we want to enable each other to do those things because of this thing that we all agree on. So yeah, I appreciate the thoughts, and all of this whole thing is about what are the big pie in the sky ideas, if you understand the expression, because that's how we start to figure out what's possible, by having crazy ideas.
I think that raises a really great way to think about this, and we use this a lot when we're looking at an organization that's in a complex context. And we often talk about it as, rather than what do we agree with and what do we not agree with, what you just said there, Damien, what do we hold really tightly and what do we hold really loosely? And those loose things are around, you know, I think we've heard competition is an important part for some communities and not for others. What are some other things under, I think I'm keen to sort of understand what is held tightly. There's going to be so many things in this about community variation and differences in practice, what is it the things that Parkour Earth shouldn't compromise on? What defines what we're doing here and what we're doing it for? That's a big question. Yeah, please.
So, I think this ties into the competition aspect as well. And part of why competition comes up, one of the things we felt and seen is that competition just came up as a sort of the most established and easily understandable form of taking something like parkour, which could be perceived as a hobby, and making it a profession. So for most people, in conceiving it as a sport, the way to achieve professional status in the sport is usually, I mean, based on everyone's experience with all the rest of the sports, to become a competitor and to try to aim for a peak. But the underlying motivation is still that they would like to make it their full-time profession, and for that you need resources, and competition provided at least understandable, maybe not easy, but understandable form of doing that. So what we try to do here is try to answer the broader question, which is how can we use parkour to create value in a way that aligns with the principles of parkour. And one of the things that we've really worked on here is taking what parkour has given us as practitioners and trying to share it with others. So parkour education. And we've tried to make that the focus of our mission, and we want to work in such a way that this becomes almost a more attractive and more available form of creating value through parkour than competition. Because one, it's a lot more scalable. Competition is inherently not very scalable because only the top 1% or less will ever be of professional value. Whereas in education, you can have it's infinitely scalable. The better you can educate, the more you can educate, the more there are plenty of people who would be interested in it. And we find that if we found through our actual experience that if we create, as community leaders, we create opportunities for people to be of value in parkour through things other than competition. So it could be education, it could be as Justin was saying, physical training, it could be all sorts of some who are also training professionals, like the military and the police and things like that. So it's about creating value. And I think anybody who can create value can be a professional. So then the question becomes, how can we use what parkour teaches us and what we've learned through parkour to create value? And I think what we would hold tightly then is, to very circuitously come around to answer the question, what we would hold tightly is that just having sort of a mindless form of competition where everyone's just gunning for a top already is like commonplace and happens all the time. It happens in the rat race, in the corporate world, everywhere. We want to try to use parkour's non-competitive and supportive, be strong to be useful philosophy to hold that and to create value through that, and to create to allow people to be professional through that medium rather than having to resort. As Stanislav very clearly said, this is definitely a thing that if you're starving and you don't have options, you don't have options. You've got to, you're going to take whatever comes. So you really want to set it up in such a way that this is able to create more value than the other one. That's what we've been trying to do as an organization. I clearly have been on here with you for more than an hour, so I clearly don't have pressing other work to feed myself. So it's, I think, people like us that can, from this position here, if we are interested in a particular version of a future, then we can, if we can create an environment where things other than, like those things are valued and you can create value through that, then I think we can have, then we can do, we can keep parkour tight and close to those values, because the values are meaningless unless there are people that believe in those values and act on them.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a nice principle embodied somewhere in there around, you know, this concept that whatever we do, whether it's competition, whether it's, you know, I mean, yeah, I know when I was coming up in the Australian Association, the issue of Red Bull being involved in parkour was a really hot issue. There's plenty of athletes that are now sponsored by Red Bull, plenty of people saying it's horrible from a health perspective, but also there's this huge value creation for what those people are doing. And they have a lot of passion for that. So it's up to them. I think there's this nice principle of, it's not just about the win. It's something beyond that. It's something deeper than that. And I think when you look at FIG, you can sort of see it's just about the win there. The end state is having the thing and getting the sponsorship for it. Does anyone agree or disagree with what Cyrus was saying, or want to add?
I would like to make a comment on that. Yes. Sorry for not speaking too much in this conversation. I was more in the listening side.
No worries.
For an appointment in a few minutes, so I would have to. I want to make a comment on this and comment on pretty much everything I've heard. I'm Aaron. I'm from the Israeli Parkour Israel non-profit organization, and we had discussions like this among the more experienced practitioners of parkour in Israel, and the same ideas were brought up about what Parkour Israel is holding tightly and what it is holding loosely. And I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think the topic of competition or not competition, all these things are not in our discussion. This is not the discussion that we're supposed to make, because the people or the countries or the institutions that we are going to be in contact with don't care about it. They don't care about it at all. What they care, and what we should care also, is about how we make the world a better place. And I think everybody here agrees that whether if you're doing competition or not doing competition, whether are you training like parkour, like a martial art, and whether you're training parkour to be an athlete and to inspire young generation, you are doing a physical activity that is good for your body, and you are training, and doing something to make the world a bit better. And it doesn't matter if you are coaching or you are helping people overcome mental obstacles, or you are training to do I don't know, a very big gap and inspire people to start doing physical activity. So this is what we should focus on, because if we are speaking to a council or to a country or even the Olympics committee, this is what they should care, and this is what we should care also. So our discussion should be actually about what are the methods that we are taking in order that other people who are currently not associating parkour with positive change in the world or positive change in people, okay, this is the discussion that we should make. And the methods to do it, it doesn't matter if it's competition or not competition, doesn't matter if it's business or if it's philanthropy. This is something that the private, let's call it the private sector should have, whether they're holding competitions or not holding competition. What we need to talk about is how we allow everything in that spectrum to happen, so that the common man or the common woman will hear parkour and think this is something that does good and not something that does bad. I'm sorry if my English is a little bit broken, but this is the comment I would like to make about how we make what Parkour Earth should focus on.
I really like that, Aaron, and no, I understood you perfectly.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really great. And I wanted to ask a question back to you, Aaron, around, what do you think about, there's some grayness in who's doing good and for what reason. So, and I mean, for example, there'll be people who think what FIG is doing is really good, is going to make the world a better place because it's broadening the reach of parkour, it's going to have a much bigger audience, etc. There must be something else in there. I think everyone I've heard from today has said pretty clearly that FIG is probably not what they want to support, or gymnastics governing parkour is not really what the road they want to go down. Correct me if I'm speaking out of turn there, but there must be something else in there that we can use to help navigate how we know someone is doing something good. What's that type principle for judging?
Yes, we had this discussion also, and I will give my personal opinion on this subject. I think that some of the things that FIG will do, it's not about whether they will or not do. They will continue their actions, whatever we do, okay? But some of the things that they will do are good for parkour, because they can invest money and make the spread better, and they can help create jobs or create careers. I don't know. They can do a lot of good things. Our main problem here in Israel with FIG is that the people who are taking the decisions have no relations to the parkour community. This is our problem with FIG. They can do a lot of good things, and that's why we are not ruling out cooperation. But at the end of the day, I think this is also something that Parkour Earth should focus on, and this is something that Parkour Earth should bring to the spotlight, that the people who do parkour should be the ones that decide the future. They should be the ones that decide which funding goes where, and not about, it shouldn't be the decision, a business decision, or someone who have to run another organizations in parallel to parkour.
Yeah, that's a great principle to add in. Yeah.
Hi guys. Yeah, Paul here. So I've been listening to what you guys have been saying, and how things all knit together, and what you guys want. And really what I'm hearing from a lot of you guys is you guys want a platform with which you guys can all interact with each other, and be able to share your experiences, and your practice with everybody else, whether it's through a competition or not through competition. That you guys can link into, that will give you the supports, both your groups and your federations, the right support, that you can engage with the rest of the community, and with on your grassroots level, so that you can both survive and create a viable method with which to share this practice and this discipline and sport, which we know is parkour, which is in line with what we want, which is to create a sustainable economy around our practice, while recognizing the principles of community and sharing that we've grown to come in to love, with this practice that we call parkour. So my question to you is, if we pursue this, you would need to create a platform which would be able to engage everybody else out there, and what would your ideas be on what that would take form, or how that would look like?
Yeah, so the question is, and it's something we wanted to chat about as well. So let's just jump over to it around, how should we be engaging? When I was speaking to Damien yesterday about how we're talking to people to fit into one of the other of these global engagement sessions, we were having to reach out by Instagram. We do a lot of reaching out by Facebook. We do a lot of reaching out by direct email. But everyone speaks different languages in different places. I mean, what is that? Is that something that doesn't exist and needs to be created, or how are we meant to engage with people? What does that platform look like?
Yeah, if I can chime in, it's kind of a difficult topic because a few years ago there was the parkour forums everywhere, and that made the community like a real community. And I remember talking with one guy who was involved in the FIG scandal, who I was talking to him and I talked about community, and at some point he said, there's no community in parkour. Maybe there was at some point when there were forums, but now there's no community at all. And it's like, it exploded in like different small communities on Facebook or on Instagram, on YouTube, or like there's all these different platforms and they're all privately run. And it makes it really difficult to like bring people together like it was in the old days, which I didn't even know these old days because I started like at the end of this forum era of parkour. And like we tried it in Switzerland. We have like a public chat that people can join for the Swiss Parkour Association. And it kind of works, but it's like, it doesn't have the reach that the forums had in the old days. So if we create something for Parkour Earth, let's say a public platform on the Parkour Earth website or something like that to discuss like any matters related to parkour, I'm not sure people would join that. It's really hard to compete against the mediums that already exist. So yeah, maybe it's a pessimistic view, but I'm not sure what we can do like that.
I don't think it's pessimistic at all. I think this is something that I've seen almost every organization face when they get to a certain size. At some point, there's too many people to have one-on-one engagements with everyone. I think a question to think about would be, in the forum days, it was very much so, Elliot from Australia is sharing with Jan from Switzerland, who's then talking to Aaron in Israel. And it's very much so this sort of international relationship because the community wasn't that big. But now you've got communities in Switzerland, in Israel, in Australia that are bigger in some places. And I wonder if thinking about it in that old way of one-to-one it's sort of a misdirection around how to communicate. And, typically a federation would do it where you've got, an international group that talks, and then that feeds down to a national group who then talks with their community. But the kind of the theme of this discussion is whether the way that it has been done in international sports federations is appropriate for our community or not. I mean, what do you guys think? Is that flow down appropriate, or is it a little too informal or too formal? Sorry. Yeah. What's that different style of communication? It's a hard question. And I'd also be keen to invite some of the board members on Parkour Earth to jump in on that question, because I know you guys have been thinking about it as well. If you've got any thoughts, please share.
I think it's also worth mentioning the extra complexity that what we are doing in Parkour Earth is sometimes, I guess, secret is the right word. It's kind of a private strategy that we're trying to execute without wanting to publicize it, for example, to FIG, or not wanting to talk about it to everybody until we've had enough time for everyone's professional opinion or something like this. So on top of the complexity of reaching all the people, is not speaking to the wrong people at the wrong time as well. Like, we could just post every single thing on Facebook and share it to everyone every time, but there's also that layer of the right people at the right time that I think adds to it. But it would be really nice if there was a way that we had, you know, clear lists of, okay, send to this group now, done, easy, sorted. But I don't know how to build those yet.
There's so much interesting stuff in that, I think. I mean, what do people think? I mean,
if I just jump in with this complexity, is that, you know, when we launched the engagement project and people were starting to sign up for the talks, someone asked the question, you know, will the talks be recorded and made available afterwards? And we said that that was something that we wanted to do, but we'd like to hear, you know, what are your thoughts? Do you want it to be recorded? What was their motivation for asking the question? And they said that, you know, they think that Parkour Earth should be trying to be as transparent as possible. And so they really wanted the sessions to be recorded and shared online so that other people could view it and engage with it, because they didn't, you know, with the intent to limit these sessions so that people get a chance to talk and we can delve deeper without having too many people engaging at the same time, means it kind of makes it more private, but also makes it slightly more exclusive. And so, so yeah, they really wanted to make sure that it was going to be available. And so we want to do that. But at the same time, we were thinking, if we video the session, will those of you that have decided to attend, does that impact on what you choose to say? Because you would rather, you know, say it anonymously, or just how does that impact that engagement? And so that's something that I guess Travis is kind of talking about a little bit in terms of a wider strategic thing around how do we make sure that the community is engaged well and feels like they get buy-in and that they are privy to what's happening and get to feed into that, but also Parkour Earth is doing that in a way that's sensible, you know, obviously legal, and doing it in a way that actually can create the results that the community actually wants. Because yeah, I could see scenarios where if it was, you know, I guess I as CEO, if I was doing this full time, which I'm not, is, you know, should I Twitch stream my life? You know, should I Twitch stream my office so that everyone can see every single little thing of Parkour Earth at the time? I mean, maybe people want to see that, and it might help us monetize Parkour Earth. But you know, I guess there's a spectrum. There's something there, and we really want to be as open as we can, in a way that is both sensible and appropriate and does right by the community.
Yeah, and there's sort of this thing of how do you be as open as you can without, you know, too much information can be just as exclusive as no information. Not to mention the burden on getting all that stuff out there.
Yeah. So if I just share a quick example, so my day job, I work for what's called a regional sports trust here in New Zealand, and we help support and increase physical activity basically through the region and through a range of different initiatives. And today our CEO announced a big restructure, which may cut half of the current staff. So it's quite a big transformational change, and it's gone through a year, pretty much the best part of a year's work in terms of reviewing strategies and doing all sorts of behind the scenes stuff. And so it's not until today that we've actually heard from the CEO directly of what the vision is. But in his delivery, you know, he took great care to show care to us staff in his delivery, whilst also you know, giving a really clear high overview and the rationale behind everything. And then when it was open up for questions, I asked the question, you know, will the feedback that we receive, because we're going to go into like he's going to be meeting with individual teams and talking into the actual finer detail of what that change looks like for the different groups. I asked, is that feedback going to be made public? If Elliot was a colleague in a different team, will what he shares about, the concerns he has or the input that he has on this proposal, will that be made to me? Because that will help me inform, think about my decisions and my feedback. And they said absolutely. So the transcript of what he shared, his presentation, is all being made available to all staff, and all of the feedback that they receive through the consultation process will be made available to all staff to help inform their own feedback, and to make sure that consultation process is inclusive and transparent. So you have a period of I guess, secrecy in all this work from the leadership to develop the proposal, to do the reviews and do all this process. But then once it's come to actually implementing any change, nothing will be done until the consultation period is finished. So that's just an immediate example that happened today, where I'm seeing one method of holding information, tightly to the chest to make sure it's done well and done right and prepared well for the staff, but then inviting a lot of engagement to try and make sure that whatever final result is done is communicated well with the people, that the community that it matters.
Yeah, and Sydney raised some good points in the chat as well around, Parkour was built and has grown up on the internet, so it should be a main media for communication, at least focusing on the community there, but also that there's this spectrum of engagement that's needed, this sort of less confidential, less formal version. In the old days, talking about forums and social network groups, there's plenty of Facebook groups where a lot of these discussions have. But then there's sort of this more formal channel as well. And it makes me think, and Sydney, feel free to add more comments if I'm misrepresenting this, but it makes me think that there's almost a process that would be worth doing of trying to map some of these primary formal and informal engagement methods. When we're doing an engagement like this, where do we go? Do we flood it on Parkour research? Do we flood it on all of the national groups around the world? When we're making a strategy statement, what's the main channel that goes through? Is that through, when Parkour Earth was doing its open letters in the first bit, it was PDF letters sent out on every channel possible. So it had this air of formality. So that might be an activity that the Parkour Earth board needs to pursue, is looking at what are all those channels.
Yeah, I think there's like two senses of communication that we're talking about here. There's like Parkour Earth communicating stuff that Parkour Earth does to like the world, to other practitioners. And this could be like videos or like the attractive content that Sydney is talking about. But there's the other side of communication that is just like making sure that practitioners from different countries talk together. And it's Parkour Earth doesn't need to be involved directly in that sense. It's just making sure that people can communicate. And it could be like coaches talking about education, or people in different associations or federations talking about how they set up their federation or set out matters of governance, that kind of stuff. And like, it's two different aspects of communicating. And I think the forum era is more like this person-to-person talk. And the attractive content that Sydney is talking about is more the communication from Parkour Earth to like the external world.
Yeah, that's a really good insight around, we used to be just here because there were just practitioners and maybe, Urban Free Flow and Parkour.net. But now we're talking about a really broad engagement of everyone from non-practitioners, and under that you've probably got a bunch of different categories, like obviously there's the general public, but also other sports federations. I know Parkour Earth has done some engagement with similar federations that have gone through similar struggles, like skateboarding and I think surfing as well. I'm not sure about that one, but other sports federations, other international sports governance federations and stuff. Organizations like the IOC, organizations like national governments. So there's a bunch of different sort of governance groups, there's a bunch of different general interest groups, and then some really specific ones as well, which are sort of a bit separated out there. I think we're sorry, Damien, you jump in.
I was just saying, I know you're going to tidy it up later, but the two tags you've got under formal and informal, you'll have to swap.
Yeah.
Cards are
tiny.
No, they're opposite. So you've got the informal.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So to give you a bit of an overview of the process after this, just to frame the next bit of the discussion, is you guys have given some really good structures that I think would be really good to fill out as we start talking in these other global engagements to some of the different groups. So we're also engaging with Parkour businesses, we're engaging with the general grassroots community, and we're engaging with what we've broadly called influencers, but it's those people that have some way a strong connection to the Parkour community. Maybe they run a Parkour media, or maybe they run a Parkour coaching organization and have a really strong voice. So I'm really keen to fill out some of these a little bit further when we get into them as well. I just wanted to, because, and apologies to you, Sydney, I didn't talk about these before. Sydney's been putting some really good stuff in the chat, which I've just been copying in, but Sydney had sort of, from what I saw, this almost summarizes the first half of the discussion we had, for Parkour Earth being a voice for all countries at one time, with democratic principles in leading the community, having strong established organizations to defend Parkour against others. And Sydney, I guess that's sort of both internationally, but also helping organizations to set up nationally. This point around connecting more experienced and old organizations to help new ones and to help new emerging communities to establish. And then communicating beyond the Parkour world, to other folks within the broader community as well. I just really liked those 4 points you put in there. The last discussion, I think in the last maybe 5 minutes, a quick discussion, then I wanted to just open it up generally for questions, is, considering all of those things we've talked about, what are the gaps that Parkour Earth is filling? I think we've talked about some of them there, around facilitating communication between practitioners, organizations, etc. But are there any other things that have come to any of your minds while we've been talking about where Parkour Earth fits in the communities, and what the focus for what they're doing should be? What's that service that Parkour Earth is really providing?
Can I go down? Who was talking? Oh, sorry. Elliot, can I go?
Please, Mitchell.
Yeah, so I'm actually Liam. Mitch couldn't make it today. But I just wanted to say that I think your what is going to start off by buying people into PK Earth. At the moment, I mean, at least what we've experienced here is that there is a huge degree of skepticism. So I think, as much as like in the future, like I love these ideas of the levels of engagement, and it is important to close things off occasionally to make sure you can make decisions without being slowed down by getting lots of input from people. But I think in the short term, what at least the community around me seems to want to need is a sense of, is there going to be something that comes out of Parkour Earth? And it doesn't need to be much. It can just literally be a nice website with, you know, here's some links to all the different people in the community. Here's our vision statement. Here's how you can get involved and help out. Stuff like that. But it just this sense of legitimacy right now, I think, is the most important part, because as soon as you get that, you'll have buy-in from everyone else. And then like at the moment, the people we had here is not necessarily a representation of everyone in the world. But I think this small group right now needs to buy some sort of legitimacy, some sort of, we are worthy. And then I think you'll be able to get the conversations that you need.
What do you think's necessary in that? I mean, in that fight for legitimacy, what's going to land with the community or with your community?
I think just like frequency of output to start off with. You basically are going to need to build even just a database of, hell, you could call them articles or things like that. Just if we were to list what has Parkour Earth achieved, there needs to be something. They don't have to be massive tasks, but there needs to be a list. And that can be like, there is a list. Like, I know there is a lot of stuff that you guys have done already. It's just, we need to be able to give that to the community. Like, I need to be able to, I couldn't sit here and say to someone in the community, hey, these are all the things that Parkour Earth have done. And so I think literally simple as a fancy looking website, get somebody to write you some articles saying, you know, here's an article on the importance of community spirit in parkour. Here's an article on, you know, here's an article on how to get in touch with the Australian parkour community. You know, what communications methods do they use? Things like that. You could reach out to your partner organizations and just be like, hey, like, you know, how does your community work? And then you just sort of start acting as this information center, and that gets you the buy-in for the more important stuff.
Yeah, that reminds me of in the early days, the Australian Parkour Association had Parkourpedia. I think it's still around, and I know we got a lot of buy-in, both nationally and internationally, just because it was a list of useful resources that people needed at that time. For the wider group,
I find the idea really interesting to have like members of Parkour Earth share a bit how they work, how they organize, what are their goals, what have they achieved in their country, what are their problems, and can give like insights on how each country works with parkour, what are their relationship with Parkour Earth and other organizations, and it can give like motivation for others to create a federation or work on the federation, or like a roadmap of, yeah, this can be achieved in your country if you work at it. Because like in Switzerland, most of what happens in Switzerland is at the local level, like associations do most of the work, and SPK doesn't have a lot of work to do. It's just doing education stuff at the moment. But if you give insight on what different countries are doing with the federations, can give like a roadmap of what can be achieved.
Yeah, that's really nice, and it fits really nice with that point earlier around helping using examples from the established communities to help newer communities.
I say that there's had feedback from different organisations, both those that currently exist in communities where they're trying to form organisations to help represent themselves nationally, is to learn not only a roadmap of what things organisations do, but how did they set them up, and how do you do that? You know, how do you create an organisation in the same way as what we're trying to do internationally? How do we bring our groups together to actually work on something productively together when we know we disagree? Or, you know, or because I think as Stanislav was saying earlier, that, you know, a lot of people just want to go and jump around, and then all of a sudden, more established organizations are starting to make decisions for your community. All of a sudden, you're having to learn all this stuff that you didn't know, you know, about governance and organizations and setting up companies, or, you know, whatever it is to formalize and have some kind of structure. So the opportunity to leverage Parkour Earth's member organizations and their journeys and all the different laws and regulations and ways that those organizations have been established, I imagine would be quite valuable for new organizations. And even just, you know, I know that you know, when Parkour NZ was established, we had a lot of support from the Australian Association to learn about, you know, that process. But my understanding for the genesis of the organizations is quite different, and so that sort of changes the vision for that organization. So for Parkour NZ, it was the first thing that the community did as a collective, besides interacting on the forum. That collectively the community decided, hey, I think we'll have more legitimacy in New Zealand if we form a national body, because that's what the community in New Zealand is used to within sport, the sporting structures of the country. So if we form an association, maybe people will take us more seriously. They'll see that Parkour has more value than how they're perceiving us at present. So that was our reason. I know that other groups have been established because of issues with insurance and you know, the potential of a coach being fined. So we need to formalize a structure that protects those people. And so there's all of those different things may have some value. I'd also like to, unless someone wants to comment on that, I just wanted to throw something out that's a little bit different, just to start that conversation and get people's perspective. People happy with me to do that?
Yeah, please.
So just one thing.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I really have to go. But before that, basically I want to say that something has to be happening currently and internationally, and connected to the national federations or associations to support this event. For example, can be happen some competition or some event worldwide, but it's very important to show to other organizations that, okay, we are here and we are here for this purpose, for this case. So I think it will help to unite the people, and also can be the strategy of federation, because the federation must construct all this body of the politics for future. So yeah, it's normal. Many parkour organizations are not in accord in many things, but anyway, if we have some event with the same values, because parkour has some values that is the same for any organization. So doesn't matter what is the interest of organizations, we have some values. So maybe organize one international event connected to national parkour bodies, and yeah, that's it. And now I have to go. Very sorry. Have a very good day, and I hope you send some emails just to relate about the rest of conversation, and yeah, keep in contact.
Awesome. Thanks, Stanislav. Thanks so much for your contribution.
Have a good day. Thanks.
You too. Ciao.
Ciao.
Just for, as people might need to leave as we're getting to the end of the time, I'll throw back to you, Damien, just to add in what you're about to say and then open it up for questions. But please feel free, if you do need to leave at the hour and you have any questions that haven't been answered, please just pop them in the chat and I'll make sure everything's pulled out afterwards and we can get answers back to you. Damien.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is, first and foremost, my belief and my understanding of the role of a CEO really is to support what the community wants to do. So that's what I've done in New Zealand. If I'm not interested in something, but that's what the community wants, then that's what my role is to support. And so my belief is that the community is the most important thing for Parkour Earth to be engaging with, communicating with, doing work for, etc. However, in some of the things that has been brought up, and Aaron was sort of talking about this in terms of communicating the value of parkour to the world, is when we're in a unique position forming a completely new federation for a contemporary activity that doesn't look like so many other activities, has, you know, in a world where international sport federations are being challenged left, right and center about the way they operate and how they communicate with their athletes and how they communicate with their community. And not only do we have the opportunity to do something really special and really important for parkour, how do we use not only parkour itself, but the way we operate as an organization to communicate to the rest of the world another way of doing things, because things have been the same for such a long time. And that's why we're now, you know, hearing all these horrible stories about actually what's happened in the background, or what's been swept under the rug. And so how can Parkour Earth be an opportunity for the global sporting community to look at something and go, hey, that's different and that is really interesting. I want to learn more about that, and why have you done it that way? So that's just something that I'm curious about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I might leave sort of the structured part of the conversation there, and just for anyone who's still with us, who we've still got quite a few people on the line, just open it up to general questions or thoughts or anything on any topic about what we're doing, what Parkour Earth is, etc. Anything at all. So I'll open up to you guys for questions or thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a last comment, then I have to go, unfortunately. But we've been talking a lot about like maybe common values or the stuff that we hold tightly. And I think like there's stuff like competition, which is divisive, but it can also bring people together, because I know I've been attracted to parkour because I knew that it was non-competitive. So even if it's now become divisive, or even if it was divisive at the beginning, there's always a side like it divides people, but it brings some people together, which creates two groups. And so we need to think about this too, because it's like if Parkour Earth says we are against competition, people will buy into Parkour Earth because of that, and some people will feel excluded because of that. So that's a tricky point. And the other thing is that if FIG is here to stay, instead of talking only about what is common among parkour practitioners, we can think about what sets us apart from FIG or from other organizations. And like if FIG is developing only their competitive aspects, we can try to develop more the non-competitive aspects. And people who don't like FIG because of what they're doing will buy into Parkour Earth because we're setting up an alternative to that. And that doesn't mean that we can't develop competitions inside Parkour Earth, but I think like setting the organization as an alternative to what the sport world is doing can bring people together too. And if they don't like it, they will buy into the sports world, but I don't think we can compete on like their field, if that makes sense.
I don't know if I've captured that right, but that's a nice.
and I have to go. So I thank you for the conversation, and have a nice day or night, depending on the time. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, appreciate it. Any other questions or comments before we finish up?
I guess just drawing on what Jan said there is, it's really a mission of authenticity, because if FIG are successful in getting parkour into the Olympics, then there is, I mean, I'm an optimist and I really like challenging the status quo, and I think people should always feel that they can change the world. But if FIG is successful in taking parkour into the Olympics, for those that are interested in Parkour Earth having a role in overseeing that, you know, that becomes, you know, very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to create that change. I don't know of any scenario where an international organization no longer is in charge of their sport, or a thing that they say is their sport at the Olympics, for example. So it means that that can't be the be all and end all of the organization. And as people have rightly said, that's a small, it is a portion, but it's a small portion of what the breadth and depth of the parkour community and what parkour is, what it looks like and feels like around the world. So I think Parkour Earth's mission is really one of authenticity and being able to meet these collective needs rather than smaller. You know, it's a big thing having a new sport in the Olympics, but it's arguably a little bit more linear and not as significant in perhaps a more philosophical sense than what the rest of parkour is.
Yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts or questions to anyone else, or on the Parkour or to the Parkour board who are here?
Elliot?
Yeah, Liam.
Just a last thing. So I think whatever you do, just make sure over the next, I don't know, however long before you I guess before Parkour Earth works out where they're going from here, can you just make a focus to at least be communicating even maybe monthly, so it'd be monthly at the most infrequent, but like an explicit communication to anyone that's ever sort of bought in. Like, I guess you've got all our email addresses now, but just, I think we just need something like, I know you're putting it out through other channels or whatever, but it would feel nicer as an organization, as an association. You'd get more buy-in from, and I think from other associations as well, if there was an explicit message from the CEO saying, hey, as much as you can't watch my Twitch stream, here's at least like a summary of what I got up to, or what we got up to, or what are we arguing about at the moment. It doesn't even need to be like what you've achieved, just literally what is like on the table right now. And then it just makes us feel a little bit more, I guess, included, or at the very least that things are happening.
I think that there was a thought that came up with one of the discussions we were having before about the channel around this thing of, you know, what are the problems we're looking at, or what are these issues that we're trying to wrestle with. To me, it seems really cool to have that as an open discussion at all time. And maybe there's some sort of platform you can have where it's like, these are the curly questions we're wrestling with. Dump your thoughts here, and or engage in this session where we're going to be looking at that question specifically. That's sort of an add-on to your thought, but yeah, I like that idea of just keeping it more regular.
Depending on the platform you use, there's ones that you could even set up an automatic notification that basically says, these are the topics that came up, this is what the responses were, and you don't even have to send the email yourself.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
Sorry, if I could just add before anyone else needs to go, is because we know not everyone would want to connect in this particular way, and because we know not everybody can, nor can we do it in every single language and every time zone, that's one of the reasons why we've created the survey. That broadly is asking the same kind of 4 large topic questions. So please share that with your communities and help support them, and one, being aware of it, that we'd like them to engage, so that we hear as much as we can. But also, if anyone is in a position to continue to translate those into other languages so that we can share it with those that we haven't been able to connect with so far, that would be really cool.
Yeah, and I think that just raised something good. If we close out here, Damien, if people have other thoughts or want to get in touch or anything, would everyone have your email, or maybe I can just type it in here?
They should have it was in the Zoom registration, but it's damien.puddle@Parkour Earth, and yeah, people are most welcome to contact me directly. I do have a day job, and I volunteer as the CEO of a national organization as well, but I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. And actually, one of the things, drawing on from Liam's point there, is there's an opportunity to ask questions both in this setting, but also when people registered. And there's a few different things that came up, things like, what is Parkour Earth's relationship to IPF? What's happening with FIG currently? Would like to know more. What's happening internationally? There was the query around, will you be videoing these and recording them and making them available? What has Parkour achieved? Some of these things that maybe there's an opportunity in the midst of all of this stuff for me to just film responses to those questions. Hey, here's a bunch of questions that have come up through the process so far, and here's a bunch of answers, just so that people are aware of these interactions if they're not actually in the moment with us.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Okay, well, I might finish up, and I won't say anything else besides in terms of the process for what happens next. Like I mentioned before, there's 3 more global engagements that are happening in this first group with professionals, influencers, and grassroots communities. There's also intent from the discussions I've had with the board and with Damien to gather from this who are the people that we're not reaching, who are the people that we're not talking to yet, whether it's because they're in a community we're not aware of, or they speak a language that they haven't been able to engage with, or they're part of different minority groups that would have trouble engaging in this way. So there's a potential for another series of global engagements to happen after this in some other formats. All of the content that's here that you guys have suggested, we're going to be capturing all of that and writing it up. And it's also going to form a basis for some of the discussions that we have in the next engagement, so we can all keep building it. That's sort of the process from my end. Other than that, I'll throw over to you, Damien, just to close it out. Any last thoughts or questions or requests from anyone or from yourself to finish up the session?
Cool. I'll give 10 seconds to anyone who wants to jump in if they do have a final query.
Just wanted to say thank you for all the stuff that you guys have done so far. I think it's quite refreshingly unusual that all of you, despite, as you said, doing this voluntarily, are putting this much time and effort into getting at least the people who are interested, because that's one of the things that we ran into with, like, everybody wanted to have their opinion heard, but very few people were willing to put in any effort to have that happen. So I appreciate at least that for the people that are, like, when y'all think about communicating to the public, I feel like you guys maybe even do so much that you reward the people that don't put in the effort. So we tried to put out like try to include everybody, even going out of our own way to try to include them. And then we realized that the best inputs came from the people that were self-invested and willing to put in some effort to make positive contributions themselves. So I guess it's definitely something you guys can think about, because I think so far all that you all have done is beyond reproach.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, sir.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, awesome.
I'd like to throw some of my thoughts at the end about Parkour Earth. I just wanted to say that for now, and there's kind of a low awareness among the community. For example, in Poland, that Parkour Earth exists and does something. And for me and for our federation, it's kind of umbrella organization, and it can give credibility or like some kind of authentication for federations. I think it's a good point to point out. I think, of course, that everyone said that it should represent some common values. What's more, I think it could give some guidelines, like, for example, USPK during the pandemic situation gave some recommendations what to do, how to practice parkour during pandemic. So it's like, I think it's quite important to share some like valuable information. Also, any kind of research statistics about parkour, like I think that, for example, when I make some kind of project, I would take some information from Parkour Earth, for example. I don't know, some kind of statistics, how many people in the world practice parkour, how big is injury rate, what percent of women practice parkour, some kind of this stuff. When it will be available for people to take this information from Parkour Earth, that would be great. What's more? Yeah, and I really liked the information, some kind of suggestion that someone made, that there should be some kind of summarization of what Parkour Earth does, like social media posts, like very often, so it can show us that something is going on and it's going in good direction. So there is not a lot of silence, something like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with Thomas that I think one of the ways that would definitely, I think, create marketing, like awareness and buy-in for an organization would genuinely be to just provide very high quality information and education that that is useful to everybody that's interested even in parkour. So this ties into the people who are doing parkour, not doing parkour. I think everyone would benefit from, because from all that I know of the people that are part of Parkour Earth, there are people who are very sort of knowledgeable and have a lot to contribute and share. So I think Parkour Earth could provide a very broad, nice platform for them to share some of that with the parkour community, especially those who may not ever have been exposed to the philosophical side of parkour or some of the history of it, you know, things like that. Even having some well-researched information about the history, because I know a lot of it is out there, but people who just start parkour now looking at YouTube videos may not ever come across that kind of information. I know a lot of people locally who were completely unaware of the background, and so I think because Parkour Earth is formed by such a collective of knowledgeable and well-versed people, they could be a great source of information for that, and that would help create legitimacy, buy-in, awareness, spread, and everything.
Mm. Yeah, great. Awesome. Brilliant.
5
Damien,
seconds.
did you want
5 seconds for anybody else? That was some great stuff. So I'm glad I gave that window. 5 more seconds. Cool. So, and thanks, Liam, for those comments as well in the chat. Yeah, this whole process is about trying to make sure that the community is able to have its voice and be in charge of its own future, and whether Parkour Earth can be that platform. And we don't want to force anyone on anything, but here is the opportunity to develop something that has been created by 6 national federations who are communicating with each other, wanting to set up a platform for everybody to have buy-in. And we want to thank the current member federations, but everyone that's contributed to today, because if it's going to be something that's going to be of value, it requires people's input and people's being able to hear all of this wonderful stuff, and it's going to be so interesting and so cool. As a researcher and as a scholar, I love this as an administrator to figure out, okay, how are we going to develop this and do all this kind of stuff, but also as a scholar and as a researcher, just so fascinated to hear all of the rich interests and things that people bring. And so to do this well requires all of this information. So once again, I want to thank you, everyone, for sharing and for your input. And we thank you for the supporting comments and things that you've had, but also for the critical questions that you ask us, because how can we be better if we don't challenge ourselves? And so, yeah, appreciate all of everything and anything that comes our way. And we look forward to continuing to connect with yourselves and with everyone else that wants to engage in this process. So thank you.
Thanks, Damien. Thanks, everyone. You'll be hearing from us all soon. Bye.
Thanks a lot. And hi, and Yana and Panda. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Cyrus.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. You're still the host, Elliot, so you can pause the recording.
Brilliant.